Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Today I'm going to show you how you can turn a router table into a biscuit joiner, and all you need is one little router bit. This is the router bit that I'm going to be using today. It's called a winged cutter, and the thickness of these cutters is 5/32 or 3.96 millimeters, and that's the standard width of biscuit cutters because they're to accommodate any of the biscuit sizes, and that's called a 20 size, a 10 size, and a 00 size. And 20s are by far the most popular, and that's what I'm going to be using today. Now, if you look at these cutters, you'll find that you can buy them as parts or you can buy them as a kit. I purchased the arbor. I already had the bearing, so all I need to purchase was the arbor and the cutter. But you can also purchase a kit that comes with the arbor, the two bearings, two different size bearings, and the cutter. And I'll put a link on the article on Woodwork Web so you'll be able to have a look at those. Now today I'm going to be using some 3/4 inch wood, and I've got my measuring bar here because I've used that to set the height of my wing cutter, and my measuring bar is 3/8 because that's half of 3/4. So all I've done is set that against the cutter to get my height, and that tooth, the center of that tooth is just right at the top of that measuring bar, so that's all ready to go. I've taken a moment to make a cutaway. So I've done a couple of cuts here, and then I've cut away the top of it so you can see the inside of these cuts. So the first one I made, I just slid the wood in. The second one, I slid it in and moved it along. And that's what the cuts look like when it's the circle cut. And clearly, it's not big enough for one of our number 20 biscuits to fit in there. So we need to make one that's a little bit elongated. And I made this one a little bit long because I wanted to measure how far it needed to be. And what it turns out is if we put the wood in and just move it just a ½ inch, that is more than enough to accommodate a number 20 biscuit. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing. Now, whenever we're working with a biscuit joiner, or in this case, the bit in our router, we need to know what the face side is going to be, because we know that that bit, whether it's in a biscuit joiner or this one, is not probably going to be perfectly in the middle. So we need to keep our faces aligned, and you can see that I've marked this board when I cut it in half, and that's the mark on there. And one of the ways that we do that, some people will mark both face sides, and I used to do that, but more recently I've been using tape, and I find tape for a couple of reasons. It stands out, and it's easy to take off. Pencil lines sometimes can be a little bit harder to take off. Now what I'm going to do today, I'm going to tape where I want to put biscuits, and I'm going to run those on, I'm going to put tape on the two ends and a couple in the middle, and then we're going to check and see how well this board lines up once we've installed those biscuits. Now after I put this tape on, what I'm going to do with a very sharp knife, I'm going to cut it in half, because this tape happens to be a little over ½ inch wide. So it's going to turn out to be our measuring piece on the boards. But I've also got a jig that I've made for the fence. Now that my wood is marked and the tape shows me not only the face side, but the distance that I need to run that slot along, so I've gone ahead and made a very simple little jig that will fit over top of my fence. And it depends on your router what it is, and you can see I'm sort of lining that up there so that that's in the middle of the bit, and I'm just going to clamp that down. And now the only thing I'll have to do now is take the wood and push it in on that side right into the bit, run it along to the other side of the tape, and that will make the slot. Bring it out, do the same thing on the other one, run it along, pull it out, and so on. And that's how I'll get all of those slots. Now with a very sharp utility knife, I'm just going to cut each one of those, and I want to make sure that I don't scrunch it up. I don't want it to wrinkle. Nice, there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead now and cut all of those slots. Okay, so let's take a moment now to put some biscuits in there, and let's just see how this lines up. There we go. And up the end. There we go. Now that's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. In fact, it's good and it's perfect in some places, and not quite so much in others. And that's the nature of wood when you're using biscuits, as it can be. If you look at it, you can see. Hopefully you can see anyway that it's almost perfect there. You wouldn't need to plane this board, even the worst part. You'd still be able to sand that. But there are some pitfalls with this, so let me talk about that for a second. Now, despite the fact that the piece of wood that I just joined together worked very well, in a little bit of sanding, it'll be just about perfect. But remember, it's not very long, and the little pieces that I have are pretty narrow. And as a test material, it worked fine. But remember, a lot of the wood that you're going to be working with is not straight and not flat. And even this piece that I have here, if you look underneath here, when I push down, you'll see that it's already bowed, just this little piece of wood here. And when you're running wood through this, you need to make sure that it's absolutely straight and flat when it goes in here. So you might need to use feather boards to hold it down to make sure that it's flat. Otherwise, you're not going to get good cuts. Now, you should know that biscuit joiners, when they were first invented, they were actually invented to be used on MDF material for making cabinets. And they do such a great job of that because MDF material is always straight and flat. And that's why biscuit joiners work so good on that. Now, those of you who follow me will know over the last few years, I use this little Dowel Max jig, and I use it instead of mortise and tenon. I use it for all my joints, but I also use it for joining wood. And the reason it works so well is because it only needs to grab a little piece of wood. It doesn't care that the rest of the wood is bent or warped or whatever. I only need to put like one hole in this little area here. So I would do the same thing as I would with a biscuit joiner, and I would use dowels instead. And this does such an excellent job, and that's because it does just a little hole each side. So once you know the pitfalls and what you need to do to make this system work for you, for the cost of a wing cutter and an arbor, $35-ish, you can now have a biscuit joiner, and it might work for whatever the kinds of things that you're working on, and it might work perfectly for you. That concludes my video for today. To show you another function for your router table, in this case, turning it into a biscuit joiner. And a lot of people don't realize that this kind of a bit is available and what you can do with it, but also to show you some of the pitfalls that you might run into and what you can do to fix them so you can get even better results from your tools. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.